These are real buyers that will show up. We write letters for those. We're very specific in the letters that we write. So let's say it's Nick Baldwin. I'm going to write up the letter and it's going to say, hey, Mr. Seller, I've got a husband and a wife, Nick and Ann, and they're looking for the single family residence. It's in your neighborhood.
LabCoatAgents podcast.
Well, this episode, we are bringing back a former guest 2 years ago. And as we were just discussing offline, things have changed, I would argue, much for the better for her. Jess Lenouvel is back. And this time she was, last time she was coming to us from Toronto in Canada. Now she's coming to us from the Bahamas because, hey, who wouldn't want to live on an island in the Caribbean on the beach? And she is still doing what she's been doing, which is helping real estate professionals go from 6 figures to 7 figures. And Jess, what about the person listening right now who's not made it to the 6 figures yet? Can you speak to them as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the foundations are actually the same. I think that when we first start out, a lot of the time we're focused on the wrong things. And I do the same initial exercise with the brand new agent as I do with the veteran who's really trying to create some scale. And that starting point is always vision. Where do you want to be ultimately? And then how can we make every decision and essentially reverse engineer all of the steps of your business back from that point? I think what happens, especially with new agents, and we all have fallen into this for years and years, is not getting super clear on what we're building and why we're building it. And then we get super focused only on the next deal, the next deal, the next quarter, the next quarter. And then what ends up happening is we're 5 years in and we have this business that is not at all what we wanted it to look like because there was no real plan or intentionality behind it.
I love it. And that is what we were going to discuss today. But first, we've got to hear the story. So you were episode 76. So if you didn't catch the first one, it might behoove you to go back and listen to that and then listen to this one and see kind of how things have evolved. But the place I want to start is, okay, obviously we just went through COVID, right? You and I talked when it was still in the early going of COVID. And yeah. I'm guessing that helped migrate you south. But tell us, what the Bahamas, why?
Yeah. So why not? First question. Yeah, I mean, my husband and I, so we're coming up on our 9th wedding anniversary. And about 11 years ago, we went on our 3rd date to Jamaica. And we were not the normal, normal dating couple. We went to Jamaica for a week and I remember being there and us both thinking, okay, so we obviously are obsessed with each other. And how do we make this something that is part of our lives? How do we live? There's nothing that my husband's number one goal in life, we joke around, was that he would own a palm tree one day. That's all he wanted. He's like, I just want to have a palm tree growing on land that I own. And so, I guess it was a little over a year ago, we bought, well, maybe it was more than a year ago, we bought the Canadian dream home. It was 7,000 square feet, indoor pool, 70s style, super, super cool house. And we started the renos on fully gutting it. And as we were doing the renos and planning things out, my husband kept saying, where are we going to put the palm trees? We were looking at different places that had the right humidity, that we could put pots in, that we could have palm trees. And I basically looked at him and I was like, I feel like we're trying to make this into something that it's never going to be. Yes, okay, we've made this giant investment here, but it's not ever something that we can't, get out of or figure out. Maybe now is the time to actually do the thing that we've been talking about for so many years and get out of here. And so we tend to do things very quickly. We knew that we didn't want to be in Nassau. We didn't want to be in like a big city. We wanted something that was like small town, quiet, tiny island, but with some amenities. So we chose Eleuthera, which is where we live, and we came down for a visit. We absolutely loved it. We looked at a house actually to rent because we were like, hey, you know what? This is a big thing. Maybe we should rent for a year. We came down here to rent. We said, all good, let's go. And then the people who own the house decided that they didn't want to rent it as like while we were here looking at the house to rent. And we were like, well, okay, I guess we'll buy it. So it just, everything moved really quickly. We'd moved down here within a couple of months. And the rest is kind of history. I mean, there was a couple of like deciding factors, one of which I, told Jeff right before this, was proximity to family. We're an easy 2.5 hour flight to all the people that we feel like.
To Nassau.
No, to Toronto.
No, but Nassau, is that where you fly into?
Well, you can. It depends on the day, and it depends on what's going on in the world. There are fewer flights here now because of COVID, but you can fly into Nassau, you can fly into Miami, you can fly into Atlanta or Charlotte and also come direct. There's a lot of different options to get here. Or you can charter something and go direct, and you can go straight from here, like 5-minute drive from here straight to Toronto. So we want it to be really close to family. And the other thing that, I think every good entrepreneur has in the back of their mind is taxes. And the tax situation here is very, I would say, favorable to businesses. So we took advantage of that as well. That's one of the reasons why we chose the Bahamas over, somewhere like Honduras or something like that. So yeah, it all came together, and it came together quickly.
So this is a real estate podcast. I have to ask you some questions about this because as I'm studying the map now, actually, I didn't realize it's like on the map, it's a stone's throw from Miami. It's not as far as I realized from Miami, which I guess makes sense because I've owned a place in Key West, and, people float from, you can see Cuba essentially on a clear day. You don't think about it. But as I'm looking at Eleuthera, which I didn't know, I'd never heard of it. And you mentioned, so there's a couple questions I have. First of all, pink sand. It says that tropical island with pink sand and diving. Pink sand. What's the story behind that?
It's absolutely beautiful. I can't even explain it. Even the beach outside my house is pink sand. You pick it up and there's like flecks of pink in it. It's gorgeous.
Does that come from a rock or something, I guess?
It must. I think it's probably like, I think that most of this sand is from like rocks or broken down coral or things like that. The other thing that's really cool about this island is that if you go inland a little bit, there's a lot of really red soil. For those of you who are Canadian, it's really like the soil on Prince Edward Island. And I read something, don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I read something that said that it's because we're in the same like wind pattern from the Sahara Desert. So some of the super, super red sand is actually blowing in from the Sahara, which is, wow. I mean, that's pretty cool, right?
Wow. And you say inland. I mean, if you look at this on a map,
it's super skinny.
Right.
It's such a skinny island.
there's barely any inland. I feel like you could throw a rock across this island.
In places, yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so one more literal real estate question. You don't have to tell me what your house costs, but what does real estate go for in this area?
Massive range. We joke around a little bit that it's like there's no rhyme or reason. But if you're on the beach and you have like direct beach access and you own frontage, it is massively different than if you don't. Mm-hmm. So we have really great friends here who just bought, a really sweet 1-bedroom cottage just as a jumping off point for them. And they paid around $250.
Wow.
To get actually on the beach with frontage, with a structure and a pool, you're looking in the $2+ million range.
What you would expect, but yet I would argue much more affordable than if you were to buy that in Miami or in
1,000%. Yes. The actual cost of living is quite high here.
Really?
Because everything has to be imported.
Of course.
So like groceries are incredibly expensive. Like a cauliflower can be $14.
Well, what
Like
about
things like that.
what do you source on? Do they source anything on the island?
There are some things that do grow here, but I would say the majority of everything is imported. Like yes, there's a place down the street called the Island Farm.
Mhm.
And on the Island Farm, like you can go and like whatever's grown, you can buy, but it's definitely not feeding the island.
Yeah, yeah, that's really, really fascinating. And you know, hey, for anybody, because you know, there's been this exodus for real estate agents, and y'all know which brokerage out to Puerto Rico. And so I imagine there's probably a lot of people that would consider this. So somebody probably listened to this first piece of the podcast and said, that's really fascinating. And they're doing exactly what I'm doing right now and searching Google Maps, and they're going to go learn more about pink sand and all that good stuff. And who knows, they might be your neighbor.
I would love that.
That's really cool. I love this. Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes. You wrote a book, so I'm guessing maybe there was this inspiration from the waves crashing against the shore. Maybe tell me.
Well, the book actually. So I was never the person who grew up thinking, you know, one day I'm going to be an author and I'm going to write a book. It was just that was never in like my realm of possibilities. But I started having a lot of people telling me that they'd read this book or they'd read that book, and it was specifically geared towards real estate. And it was teaching a lot of, you know, no pain, no gain, like that kind of crushing it hustle culture that I truly believe that COVID has actually helped us come out of quite a bit. So my book is called More Money, Less Hustle, because I really wanted to emphasize the fact that, you know, you get to have all the things that you got into real estate for: the unlimited income, the freedom of schedule, the being able to help lots and lots of people without having it be, I guess, like a trade-off of life or business. So yeah, I've talked so much over the years about how much I think getting to 7 figures is important for a lot of businesses, but I don't think that I'd ever really given it the legs in terms of why. And the why really comes down to, because that it's at that point that you actually get to live the lifestyle that people dream of and why people start businesses in the first place. So that's really the foundation for the book. The other thing that I don't know, I mean, I guess I'm a little bit of a, I have maybe some existential crisis built into like my psyche. I started thinking and, you know, reading a lot about regrets and the regrets that people have at the end of their lives. And we only get to do this once. It's a crazy thing that we're even here. And so many people say at the end, their biggest regret looking back is that they worked too much. And I think in real estate specifically, that is exacerbated or like exponentially more. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted to get the message out that, you know, there is a way to have all of the things that you want without necessarily having that regret at the end of your days, and looking back and saying, you know what, I worked too much and I didn't prioritize the things that really matter to me because I bought into this, I have to grind and I have to suffer to be successful.
Well, and you know, my first reaction to that title, and by the way, Jess founded the Listings Lab. A lot of you might know her from that. But when I hear that for that title, to me, it's just like, yeah, that's like a clickbait, right? Everybody wants more money and they don't want to have to work for it, and that doesn't exist. And so
no.
I'm gonna call you out and say, I call bullshit. More money, less hustle. Like, you gotta, I mean, I'm the guy that's creating content saying you got to grind your ass off. That's the reality. Everybody thinks it's easy. It's not easy. If you're not willing to put in the work, you're not going to get the reward, blah, 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 blah. Tell me why this title is not a cliche title.
So the way that I look at it, the way that my business is set up, the way my life is set up, the way basically like the foundations of what we teach is, the goal is to get to multiple 7 figures, because then you have the ability to leverage and stay in your zone of genius. I have tons and tons of 7-figure agents who are in our programs that work 3 to 4 hours a day. And that's what they do. They focus, they create content, They're the face and the core of the brand.
Because it
They're the
allows them to
voice.
scale.
It allows them to scale. And, you know, a lot of the time they're able to get out of, I'm actually doing a training today called The Path Out of Production. And they don't have to necessarily be in production. They get to leverage, they get to create and use automation for a tremendous amount of what they're doing. And then they're using their work time. I'm not saying they're not working at all, but they're using their work time on the highest leverage possible activities so that, you know, their time is worth, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 an hour. And so they're maximizing the time that they're actually working, and then everything else in their business is leveraged. And when we do that, it allows them to not only enjoy their business tremendously because they're doing the thing that's actually probably the most fun, but on top of that, they're working hard for a couple of hours, and the rest of the delivery of everything in their business is taken care of. What I find the most painful place in a real estate business to be is in that 250 to 500 range, because you are successful, but a lot of the time you're wearing all the hats. Mm-hmm. And so nothing happens in the business if you don't do it, which is why I teach the 7-figure push, because sure, you're not going to get to 7 figures without working hard. But the goal of this is to work hard for a short period of time so that you can get there, you can leverage, you can build out some really solid foundations. And then you get to enjoy the more money, less hustle. Whereas if you stay, or you make the decision to stay in that 250 to 500 range, you end up just having to work hard always, because you can't offload any of those hats that you're wearing.
Let's define those people. And so, and I want to digress for a second too. So first of all, that 250 to 500, that's just a range.
It's a ballpark.
That could apply to you at 100.
Markets.
That could apply to you at 750, right?
100%.
But that person is the person who refuses to let go. You're really good at your craft, but you don't trust that anybody can do it as good as you. That's the way I define that person.
Absolutely.
But I want to digress before that, because I know that there's people probably listening to this that are new to real estate, and they left a normal 9-to-5 career where obviously the ceiling was very low. Maybe they couldn't even get to 6 figures in that, depending on where they are in the country. And they got into real estate because the sky is the limit. So let's start with that person. And because they haven't even gotten to the 250 to 500 range. And I'm just using that as our example.
Yep.
Let's help that person's mindset first. Then let's jump to the person who can't let go of anything.
So I think that, again, like where we started was get clear on what you're building ultimately. Like, where do you want to be 5 to 10 years from now? And then we get to reverse engineer it. So, you know, if you're using the EOS model, or, you know, you're following what, you know, Gino Wickman teaches, right? A lot of that comes down to 10-year, 3-year, 1-year quarters. And so what we're able to do is reverse engineer the ultimate place that you want to be. Not only is that really important in terms of focus, but it also, I find that especially new agents, there's a lot of shiny object syndrome because they don't know what's going to be a game changer and what's not.
Right.
When we have that ultimate vision and we've reverse engineered it, we really know what the ultimate thing looks like. It makes it a lot easier to say yes and no. It makes it a lot easier for us to say, yes, that's going to get me closer to that, or no, that is that's a distraction. I have a coach that I've worked with for years and years, and he has always used this analogy of, you have 2 accounts. You have your ego account and you have your bank account, and you can't fill both at the same time. So the decisions that you make, and this also applies to the people who don't want to let anything go. Mm-hmm. Are you filling your ego account, or are you filling your bank account ultimately? And every decision that you make falls into one of the 2 categories. And it really helps you sort of define or figure out what it is that is going to serve you in terms of moving closer towards that ultimate vision.
Okay. So as that person, because I think that person, the one that's beneath the first range, the one that would be happy to get to that rank. They're sitting here right now thinking, oh hell, I would kill to get to 250, right? That's the person, in my opinion, and I'm very much labeling here, but there's got, that's where the grind is in infancy. And
Yes.
you've got to figure out if you've got what it takes to get to that level, which is probably like a top 5%
Yeah.
in the country, right?
Mhm.
To get to that level, you've got to put in that grind that the majority of your peers are not willing to do. Then once you get there and you've figured it out, you talk to the person who now you've, again, this, I think this is natural, right? I think everybody, once you build it, you're like, all right, I don't want to let it go.
Mhm.
And that's the problem that they then have. And they don't ever get to 7 figures because they just can't let
They
go.
can't let it go. And you know, so there's 2 things that I want to kind of bring up here. For the newer agent who is in that infancy stage, like trying to get to the six figures, or even trying to get to that 250, even though, yes, there is going to be an element of working harder than you have to at the 7-figure mark, there's also still ways to be efficient. And I think that even sometimes when we understand what our time is really worth, there are smaller things that can be offloaded. There are smaller things that we can invest our time. And when we're not only thinking about investment in terms of money, and we include time in the idea of investment, you know, little things like, is your time well spent driving 2 hours to drop off a deposit check? Or can you use that time to create content or work on your marketing or do something that is actually going to bear some fruit, and have a courier, pay a courier $20 to go and drop off that check, right? So there's still efficiencies available to you at any level. It's really just a matter of making sure that you're prioritizing the things that are going to be the highest levered activities in your business first. Then when we get to the person who is afraid to let things go, the way to ease into it, and this is, you know, this comes from Tim Ferriss, this isn't mine, it's the idea of eliminate, automate, and then outsource. And so get really clear on what you're doing every day, audit yourself for an entire week, track absolutely everything, and then look at it and say, okay, is there some redundancy here? Are there things that I'm doing that maybe don't actually need to be done? Are there things that can be automated? And then only then are there things that can be outsourced. So outsourcing, in my opinion, is the last step, because what it allows us to do is also be more efficient from a time standpoint and from a financial standpoint. There are people out there who, you know, have had their license forever, built some big businesses in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, maybe even the early 2000s, before we had software and before we had the technology that we have today, that are still outsourcing things, that, you know, paying someone $20 an hour to do a task or to do a series of tasks that could be done by a piece of software for $500 a year. So it really comes down to, are we looking at the business in terms of time efficiency and financial efficiency first? Because it's possible that you can, even at the level that you're at, either stay where you are and work a lot less, whether you're at 7 figures or not, or buy back some of that time, even through software, even just through automation and some systems, and reinvest that time back into business generating activities that will give you that next level bump.
I love it. And the way I would describe this, and we talk about this in our business all the time, is with my partners, it's like, you've got to get on the business and get out of the business.
Yes.
And it's hard to quantify or understand what that means when you are fully entrenched in the business.
When you are the business.
Yeah. It's hard to understand what it means to get on the business. And I wanted to say that because I think that might resonate with some. So as we talk to that group of people, which is a lot in the real estate world, that 250 to 500 range that we're talking about here, you know, what are those steps? Is it a mental thing? Is it psychological? Is it something that's very tangible that they can flip a switch or turn a spigot and things change? How do you advise somebody to get past that point?
I think it's a little different for each person. Some people, yes, it's going to be some mindset work. Everything requires some mindset work, right? Because we are where we are because in most cases, those are the limitations of what we can see. But then on top of that, we also have okay, what's the next step? What's the next tangible thing that we can do or change that we can make? That comes down to, we do something that we call an energy audit, which again is that full tracking of everything. Let's say everything you do in a normal week, and then going through that and saying, is this in my zone of genius? And what is the actual value, monetary value that we would give to each of these tasks? Immediately, what we want to do is take those lowest level tasks and go through the eliminate, automate, outsource process, because those should not be on your plate no matter what. Also, if there's things in there that you are genuinely just not good at, like there's so many people out there who are true entrepreneurs and visionaries and are so good at the real estate human side of things, that are spending so many hours doing paperwork that really at the end of the day, that's draining them, and it's taking away from the energy and the time that they have towards actually working on the business, which is going to be things that are going to generate more business or more efficiency or whatever that looks like for you. So that's the first process that I like to go through, is the task audit, and then go through the process of removing the lowest cost or the lowest value things on your plate. Sometimes those are personal things and they're not necessarily just in the business. So, a lot of the time what people will do is they'll have the most efficient business on the planet, and then they're going home and spending 3 hours doing laundry. Now, is that the highest and best use of your time? Or should someone else be doing that laundry and you should be actually resting, so that you're maximizing not only energy, but also bandwidth and brain capacity and all of these things. So we want to look at it as kind of like a total life holistic approach, and then get off the things off of your plate that aren't necessarily going to serve you at the level of business that you're at. So you don't have to go from 0 to 100 overnight, but it gives you basically a checklist of things that you're going to eliminate, automate, outsource, let's say over the next 3 to 6 months. And then every 6 months, you can go through this same process and remove more and more things. And when you remove those more things, you either have more free time or you have more time to invest back into the things that are going to make you more money. And all of this is kind of a cycle that then compounds over time and creates growth.
One of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times, you just mentioned the rest piece, which actually scares me when somebody says something like that, because I feel like people will take that out of context, be like, oh, sweet, Jess said I could go home and lay on the couch and watch Netflix and I'll make more money. But the other thing that you said that I think a lot of people don't understand very well, and it's obviously a very it has a special place in my heart, is content creation, because it's had a massive impact on my business. As you can see, that is a big piece of my business, and I'm very passionate about it. But that is one of those like light bulb moments for people that I think a lot of professionals struggle with. You even mention it in your about section on Amazon, where you say something about in an age where algorithms rule the world, right? And that's the piece of our world that is evolving. If you're not already there, I feel like you need to wrap your head around getting there. But I'd like your take on that, because you mentioned it, like as you get on the business and you get to that point of more money, less hustle, the whole point is you're spending more time, which is less time in the grand scheme of things, but focusing on money making activity.
Yep.
You've mentioned content creation.
Yep.
Tell our audience kind of why that's so important, and kind of maybe go a little deep on that.
So the number one thing that I hear agents say is that they want to outsource their content creation. And it is the last thing that you should ever be giving to somebody else. It is the face and the brand and the voice, and it is the soul of what you create and how the world looks at you. So often, I think real estate professionals in general misunderstand what the word brand means. They think that a brand is colors and logos and fonts. Your brand is not just the visual side of your brand. You can have a terrible visual brand and still be super, super successful. The brand is what people say about you and what the stories that they remember about you when you're not in the room. And all of that comes through content. If you go outside right now and you look around, or you go to a restaurant, or you go to basically anywhere, where is everybody's attention? It's on their phones, right? And so it's so shocking to me that people don't understand that they need to show up consistently where the attention is. And that's where people are spending their time. And that's where people are building relationships and building trust, and that it's the primary place that people spend their free time at the moment. So why wouldn't you maximize your impact for your business off of those platforms? It is, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to sit and not schedule out content or not have a VA that like manages some video editing here or there. But I'm saying that the actual creation of the message, the content, the voice, what is actually coming out of your mouth should not be outsourced to some company that's going to drop some vague quote into Canva and post it on your social media and call it a day. Mm-hmm. This is literally the most powerful thing that you have access to right now that we've never had access to before. So if people aren't using it and aren't using it efficiently and effectively, in my opinion, I don't think that they're going to last, because we have, let's just think of it in terms of science, right? Those that survive and thrive are the ones that are the most adaptable, whether you're an organism or you're a business or you're a species or whatever. And we're at a time right now where 3/4 of the real estate industry is fighting social media. And they're saying, I don't like social media. Well, I don't really care if you like social media or not. The entire population is spending their time on social media. So you can either get on it and use it as, you don't have to spend all of your free time on social media. You don't have to be a TikTok scroller. But what you do have to do is you have to create content. You have to show up in front of people on a regular basis. You have to build relationships at scale. Otherwise, you are going to stop being relevant. And relevancy is the number one thing that matters from a marketing standpoint. You will get to a point where it doesn't matter how many postcards you send out. It won't work because you have no online presence. When people Google you, Facebook comes up first. And if you don't have a relevant, well-designed, but also highly engaged Facebook profile, you're
recent,
but also like people are going to go on there and they're going to binge your content. And that has, in my opinion, essentially become your website.
Yeah.
People were, even really great marketers, we're not driving traffic to websites anymore, because that's not the most effective way to, from a psychological standpoint, get someone from stranger to client.
To our audience listening who knows me, I didn't pay her to say any of that. That came out of her own mouth. And I obviously, Jess, I don't know how well you know me, but Tristan and I coach on social. We have a Facebook group built around social and news, Drunk on Social. But one of the things I want to ask you, I want you to expand upon, is the lack of outsourcing, because there's a couple of questions I want to ask you about this, just because I like to get outside perspective. I've already made a note. I'm going back to this point in the podcast and I'm snipping some of these clips of you saying this stuff and I'm using it. But you mentioned that outsourcing piece, and there's so many, if you have any presence or spend any time on Instagram, you've gotten DM'd at some point with somebody saying, buy followers, we'll do the posting for you, blah, 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 blah. And it's easy to be like, oh, sweet, I can do what Jess and Jeff talk about, and I can just pay somebody to do it for me, and bam, magically it's going to grow my business. And the answer is no, it won't.
No, why? It'll cost you money. You can put that money into a shoe and you can set it on fire, because really at the end of the day, every single message has to be curated towards you, your market, and the demographic that you want to attract. And no marketing. So all of these social media marketing agencies and things like that are taking vague content or random infographics and just designing them and shoving them up in front of people. First of all, there's no messaging there. An infographic, in my opinion, is not at all effective unless the data is interpreted by the expert, the person who is actually building that brand or being that voice. Every single person has a personal brand. whether you want to or not. It's a matter of how powerful it actually is. And if I go on, let's say, to hire whoever, doesn't matter what I'm looking for, and I Google them, and Facebook comes up, or I search on social media or any social media platform for them, and it's a picture of their dog and a sunset on their cover photo. My thought process is they don't take things seriously. This isn't a serious business. And truly, at the end of the day, you have to control the message that goes out. There's a lot of things in your business that you can outsource, but you cannot outsource the voice and the actual content that becomes this is the foundation of who you are and who your business is in the world. I think it's so important that people understand that it doesn't matter if you have an accent. That's going to work for you. It's not going to work against you. It doesn't matter that you don't like what you look like on camera. It doesn't, none of this stuff matters, because every single person out there will resonate with someone. And if they can't find you, you have zero chance of that person finding you, getting to know you, and resonating with you. The foundation of marketing is, we hear this thrown around all the time. You have to build know, like, and trust. How can you build know, like, and trust if you don't have content? It's impossible today. So really what you're doing is you're actually setting yourself up to expire in the world that we live in. Yeah. And I think that's a really dangerous game to play. And unless you're planning on retiring in the next couple of years, it's a non-negotiable. You don't have a choice.
Yeah, I agree. And frankly, in those of you that say, you know what, I'm all in, I'm going to do it. The other thing I always tell people, and I speak on this all the time. In fact, I'm going from this podcast to speaking to a board of realtors in Houston and about social. And I'm going to tell them that they suck at marketing and they're all spammers when it comes to social. They all pay for, services, whether it's TiVo type services or apps, and you pay to avoid ads, yet you go onto social, and all you do is one big advertisement about the awards you won, the listings you have, the buyer you just closed. And the reality is that's just getting seen by your peers, not by the people that you actually intend it for, which is buyers and sellers, because they don't care. And that's where you lean. That's where, going back to what you said about outsourcing, you can't outsource authenticity. And it drives me nuts when the other thing that drives me nuts, and still to this day, I'm seeing it, is agents putting out those whiteboard type videos that have nobody in them, and they're very robotic, and it's cartoony, and it's their way of saying, I'm doing video.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
Yeah.
You're hiding.
Yes. 1,000,000%. And what Jess just said a few minutes ago, you're going to go extinct. It's going to drive 100%. You out of business, or you better be really good at cold calling or door knocking or calling expireds or all the things you probably hate doing. And that's, honestly, that stuff's going to go extinct, because the younger generations will not, they're not going to have it. They're not going to answer their phone. They're not going to answer their door. Right.
I don't answer my phone.
Yeah. Amen. Nobody does.
I don't answer my phone. My phone lives on do not disturb. And even my mom knows that she has to text me for me to call her back.
I love it.
And it's just,
that's the reality. That's the world that we're going into, and people, and if you don't have that online presence, like you said, it's our yellow pages. It's if you don't have relevance online, you're basically going to make yourself irrelevant in this business in the next 10 years.
Well, I want you to also, I think back on, I got my license when I was 21. I got this big gray fat pager that I thought was just the coolest, made me so legit. And now, could you imagine someone showing up with one of those? Basically, there's so many people that are still running their businesses like their cell phone is just their pager, and they're not actually using any of the tools or any of the things that we actually have nowadays. Attention has changed. Attention span has changed. And the things that are actually important to people have also changed. And so it's not a matter of look at me, look how great I am. Social media is a social network. It is not a billboard.
Yeah.
The thing that shocks me the most is when I see ads come up that are basically like a picture of someone's business card. And I'm like, oh, you spent money on that. Like it's super shocking to me. And they're like, well, it's brand awareness. I'm getting myself in front of people. Well, the truth is that you will never break through the noise of all of the agents doing just listed, just solds and posting pictures of pretty staircases if you don't have something that's actually going to stand out and grab attention. Really good marketing is just being able to articulate what's in the back of your ideal client's head better than they can.
Mm-hmm. When
you can do that, they will automatically credit you with the solution and you will have that business immediately. No random social media agency that's posting the same thing on 500 people's pages with a different color background is going to be able to do that for you.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? I love it. I could go on for days about this with you because obviously I love it. And I love that you said this because, and I love that the way that you brought this into one of the pieces of the puzzle to going from in the business to on the business, from going to more money, less hustle.
Yeah.
Like that is one of those puzzle pieces. Obviously we're getting long on time here and we really drove that part home. Is there anything else? Because you did mention that it obviously stood out to me, but are there any other just quick bullet point ideas that somebody who's thinking to themselves, okay, that's one of them, but to get out of it, obviously I need to scale. I need to pay people to do the things that aren't money making activity, maybe the things that I don't like doing. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you could just quickly summarize for somebody so they can kind of start thinking about it?
Yeah, I think that there's the mindset piece of things, which is obviously really important. And I have an entire chapter in my book that's dedicated to the mindset part, but there's also the team hiring and leadership. And there is not one, as much as people would like us to think that there's one way to scale a business or a team, there's not. And the differentiating things that change are people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily like there's so many books out there that will say that this is the way that you grow, or this is the way that you scale, a 7-figure team. And you may read that and be like, oh my gosh, but that's not how I would do things. And that's not me. And that's fine. The idea behind this is that, there are people who are visionaries. And there are also people who are going to be integrators. And there's going to be people who are, it doesn't matter whether or not you are the biggest, most outgoing visionary in the world. You can, in your business, still be the face and the brand and the voice and be the operations manager, right? And be the behind the scenes runner of the business while everything else is outsourced. The idea behind this is to figure out what your zone of genius really is and how you can sit in that every day so that you're being the most effective. The other thing too, that has been an absolute game changer for me in multiple businesses is hiring people who are better at me than certain things. We all have strengths and weaknesses. And it doesn't matter how much you want to believe that like you are the best at absolutely everything, you're not.
Yeah.
And I hire people who are better than I am.
Yeah.
And so, it elevates everything. The service that we provide is better than I would be able to do on my own. And everyone's happier because they're doing what they're really good at every single day and what they enjoy doing. And that is how you build not only a happy team, but also a super successful and really efficient team, which then, at the end of the day, allows you to buy a tremendous amount of your time back.
Yeah.
And when I said rest, and it freaked Jeff out earlier, the idea of rest is you work hard and then you rest. You work hard and then you rest because, I see a lot of people out there who are like, oh, like I'm amazing. I only sleep for 3 hours a day. Well, chances are like, that's going to catch up to you at some point.
That's not something you brag about, but people do.
People brag about the suffer.
Yeah.
And so the messaging shift that I would love to see in this industry is, I have this incredible life. I actually prioritize my family and my children. My children see me not with a phone attached to my face. And I have this incredible thriving business that not only serves me, but also serves many, many people.
Yeah. I love it. I love all of this. And also it allows you to not just buy back time, but buy a house in the Bahamas. So that's a byproduct of what you can do if you pay more attention to Jess. Jess, what is the best place to A, get the book?
Yep.
And B, where's the best place to connect with you?
So the book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So it's just called More Money, Less Hustle, Becoming the Seven-Figure Real Estate Agent. And the best place to find me would probably be my Facebook group, the Listings Lab Method for Real Estate Agents. There's lots of trainings, lots of stuff in there. We try to give as much value as we possibly can.
Where do you spend most of your time on social?
Facebook.
Old school. I like it. Okay.
It's still the place that I have the highest ROI.
Sure. Yeah. And that's true. And it's also got the place with the most 6-figure plus users. Yeah. And so
where do I personally spend the most time?
Yeah.
TikTok.
Yeah.
But I love myself a TikTok scroll hole. But in terms of creation, I find that Facebook is still our highest ROI.
Fantastic. Well, I want to go follow you personally, and I want to see more like pink sand photos and beach photos and sunsets. And are you on the sunrise or sunset side of the island?
We are on the sunrise side of the island because it's the side of the island that has the beach. So we've got the Atlantic on one side and the Caribbean on the other.
So you're on the Atlantic side.
I'm on the Atlantic side because, waves make sand.
What is are the waters like clear blue down there?
Absolutely turquoise and clear. And
I want to see pictures. Damn it. I want to see pictures.
You got it.
I love it.
Instagram. Follow me on Instagram because that's where the most.
What is your name on Instagram?
It's just at Jess Lenouvel.
Perfect. Jess, as always, it's been a pleasure. I love connecting with you. It's really cool. I learned some things, not even real estate related, that I'd never known before. So this was fascinating. And I hope this inspires somebody, because it got me thinking, like, you know what, why shouldn't I live in the Bahamas? I love it. I think this is awesome. I love what you're doing. I love the mindset that you're preaching. Go follow Jess. Go check out her Listing Labs group, because I think there's a lot to gain from that. I know there's a lot to gain from that. And go get the book, More Money, Less Hustle. I challenged her in the beginning and she completely answered the bell. I love it. You go back to like having a coffee on the beach or something, and I'm gonna go back to the Midwestern 100 degrees weather here.
Enjoy.
Take care.
Thanks.
LabCoatAgents podcast.